Good morning, St. Andrew. It is a joy to welcome you to worship. Welcome whether you are joining us in person or joining us online. It is great to be together on this holy day in this holy space. Welcome. St. Andrew is an open, affirming, inclusive congregation. That means we welcome saints and sinners, believers and skeptics, the wanderers and the wanderers, and all those across the political, social, religious, spiritual spectrum. So whoever you are, whatever you believe, whether you believe anything at all, you are welcomed and affirmed here at St. Andrew. Welcome. If you're here for the very first time, we especially want to welcome you and encourage you to stop by the Welcome Center, which is located in our atrium space. At the Welcome Center, you'll find some great people who would love to get to know you and to introduce you to St. Andrew and answer any questions that you might have about your visit today. So please stop by the Welcome Center today and get to know some good folks who would love to get to know you. With that, let's hear from Carly about what's happening in the life of St. Andrew this week.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, whether you're here in person or tuning in online this morning. Just a quick reminder, we're preparing our south parking lots for our annual fall kickoff party this afternoon after the 10:30 service. If you're in the mood for grilled food, gelato, games for all ages, activities with first responders, music, a jump house, helicopter landing, you're invited to join us. Be sure to check it out. It is free. If you're looking for something to do before the block party, we invite you to explore our new African American artist art display. Take a stroll down the hall, check out the diverse mediums on display, and meet the artists in the gathering space. We have a rotating art display in our building year-round, and we'd love to feature your artwork in the next art show that will be in October. Visit our website for more details and to submit your entries. For those of you who enjoy great music, good food, meeting wonderful people, don't miss out on our senior luncheon primetime. This is part of our senior adult ministry. Join us this Friday in Fellowship Hall at 11:30. Please RSVP by Tuesday, September 10th to ensure your spot. St. Andrew has been actively engaged in outreach, social justice, and community nurturing over the past year. We'd love for you to join us for our State of the Church lunch on Sunday, September 15th after the 10:30 service. It's a chance to recap our year, celebrate our achievements, and envision the future together. Barbecue lunch is free, and to learn more, visit our website. And finally, we're excited to announce that we've almost reached our goal for the March Window campaign. We're currently at $94,000 mark. So this is going to be our last week to hopefully meet that goal. To give your pledge or give towards the campaign for the stained glass window, visit the kiosk in our atrium this morning. And then we do have one quick announcement. There is a blue Toyota in the parking lot with license plate number 187FGT. Your lights are on. So, now, for those of you who are joining us online, take this time to connect with us and each other using that chat feature this morning. For those of you here in our sanctuary, just check that your cell phones are on silent, and then we invite you to stand as you're able and welcome those around you this morning. We're going to invite you to stand as you're able, and we're going to turn towards our center aisle and welcome in the light of Christ this morning.
I've been waiting for the moment. friends, will you remain standing and join with me now in the call to worship? When the way is difficult and dangerous, let us still choose what is good and just. When evil tries to break us down and break us apart, let us still choose to carry on with each other. When fear strikes our hearts, let us still choose courage and compassion, for we know the love and power of God, which abides in us, will not be overcome. It is in prayer that we are changed and held in love. May we recognize and receive grace, for none of us alone have the answer. We offer our prayers now for ourselves, our families, our neighbors, and for our world. God of love, mercy, and justice, We are aware of our own limits and need for healing and compassion. We ask for the gift of courage to live in harmony with the earth and all creation. Deliver us from the violence of superiority and disdain. Help us to see the interconnectedness of all things and life itself. Grant us the desire and the humility to listen to those whose experiences and attitudes differ from our own, to listen with an open heart and an honest curiosity. Holy One, deliver us from our silence that gives consent to ways that divide and lead to our failure to acknowledge the good in all people. Stir within us a desire and the courage to risk speaking and acting for the common good. Deliver us from the violence of irreverence, exploitation, and control. Grant us the desire and the strength to act responsibly on behalf of those who have the least and live on the margins, on the outskirts of communities and churches. God of love, mercy, and justice, acknowledging our complicity in actions that harm and lead us far from the ways of peace, thank you for being gentle, compassionate, and nonviolent. You gently call us to your wisdom. Make us into instruments of peace so that we may indeed show love, care, and concern, rendering violence to no one. For any and all this day who suffer, in mind, body, and spirit, stay near to them. For any and all who are suffering due to war, neglect, or the failings of our humanity, help us to see them as you see them, share your comfort, and tend their needs. This we ask and pray as we join our voices together to pray the prayer that has sustained generations together, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Friends, in this week's Spotlight, we'll hear from Director of Outreach, Jamie Martin, and she'll introduce two friends to share more about the incredible work and outpouring and success of the St. Andrew Market's second annual Back to School event. Let's hear from Jamie.
Hi, I'm here with two friends, two invaluable partners who helped us pull off our second annual St. Andrew Market Back to School event at East Community Center.
Buenos dias. I'm Jose Cardenas. As the director of the East Community Center for Littleton Public Schools, I oversee many organizations providing resources at East Community Center.
Good morning. I'm Julie Hall. In my role at Graceful Foundation, I build and foster partnerships working towards a healthy and more connected community, one meal at a time.
Together with countless donors, volunteers, and you, we teamed up with Break Bread, Littleton Elks, Holy Kicks, Doctor's Care, and Graceful Cafe to provide about 500 students with free backpacks and school supplies, new shoes, haircuts, medical consultations, and a hot meal. Yes, 500 students received backpacks and school supplies, nearly tripling who we were able to serve last year. And we loved on all of our guests. About 600 family members attended and shopped.
In the kitchen, our Graceful Cafe team cooked and served alongside Break Bread and the Littleton Elks, together plating more than 400 meals of hamburgers, hot dogs, fresh corn, cookies, and fruit for students and their families. As hundreds of people streamed through the East Cafeteria line, tables filled and the sounds of ecstatic joy filled the air. Halfway through the event, we ran out of plates, but we restocked and kept serving.
In the gym, a pop-up shoe store. Working with St. Andrew volunteers and the Holy Kicks team, I helped 6-year-old Luisa search for shoes. And oh, she searched. I think she tried about 100 pairs of shoes. Well, maybe 80 before finding the perfect pair. Bright pink, light up, Velcro straps, sparkly princess sneakers. Success. Luisa's mother let out a sign of relief. As the evening wrapped up, almost 192 students walked home in new kicks.
More than 600 shoppers, 500 students, 400 hot meals, 192 pairs of new shoes, 60 volunteers, and 24 haircuts are the headline-making numbers from the back-to-school event. Yet the numbers alone do not tell the story. Our second annual back-to-school event was abounded in joy and the hope that is created and found within connected community.
It is an honor to partner with St. Andrew Market, supported by a church that serves the community so well.
We're an interconnected community, a family.
Thank you, St. Andrew. You gave with your whole hearts, financial gifts, in-kind donations, and hundreds of hours of hard work. With your boundless generosity, we will continue filling bellies and building community. Together, we will continue working toward a thriving community where everyone feels safe, welcome, and seen. Together, we will keep loving on our neighbors.
Together we can.
Juntos lo haremos.
Way to be the church, St. Andrew. Way to be the church. As you give your offering this morning, we invite you to utilize the online giving platforms through the website or through the app. For those of you in the sanctuary, the offering plates will be passed among you shortly. If you do give online, we encourage you to drop a card in the offering plate as a symbol of your electronic gift. Will you pray with me? God of love, out of gratitude for your care, we bring our gifts before you. Use them for the work of caring, that all may feast at the table of abundance, walk without fear, and drink deeply from the cup of compassion. Amen.
Beloved, as we begin a new sermon series, Fight Like Jesus, the transforming power of nonviolent action, it is from Jesus' words and exposure to the practices of Mahatma Gandhi that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. developed the spiritual commitment to and practice of nonviolence. We know Jesus as one who reinterpreted the biblical laws for his day, just as Dr. King put into practice their relevance for his own time. These words that we will hear challenge us even now to engage God's law handed to Moses in light of contemporary realities and through the example of Jesus, who modeled another way. In these passages we will read this morning from Matthew, the lex talionis, the law of retaliation, is an attempt to enact fair justice among the people of ancient Israel. Wherever harm is committed, no matter the intention, the judges of ancient Israel were expected to authorize the lex talionis, the law of retaliation, only an eye for an eye. But Jesus admonishes followers not to oppose the evildoer violently, but proposes an alternative strategy for dealing with evil, to overcome evil with good. And this coming from a man who lived and did his ministry in ancient Palestine and occupied Roman province. It should not be lost on us as readers that the gospel was written in a post-temple, post-Jerusalem, post-destruction reality, making the words of Christ perhaps more relevant than ever. Let us turn our hearts and minds and hear these words from Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 through 41. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, give your coat as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. May God add a blessing to the reading of this word.
Fight Like Jesus, it's the title of our new sermon series that begins today, as Jerry said. And the very word fight in the title implies that Jesus was in no way a pushover or a doormat, a wallflower, or a wimp. In the face of trouble and intimidation or injustice, Jesus never once backed down or walked away or waffled or equivocated, nor was Jesus ever anyone's victim or tool. Jesus actually did fight for what he believed in, and he fought for what he stood for, and he especially fought for those who didn't have a leg to stand on. And Jesus was indeed a fighter. And over these next 6 weeks, we'll learn some of his fighting tactics, because the radical way that Jesus chose to fight in his day changed his world. And I believe still has the power to change us and to change our world as well. But that raises the fundamental question at the very heart of this series. Do people really change? Think about that. Can people really change? Maybe you've said, wow, this new pair of jeans I just bought, or that new Taylor Swift album is life-changing. But we're not talking about that kind of change. Maybe you never liked ketchup and you couldn't stomach even the thought of ketchup, but then you got pregnant, or you got COVID, or you found tomato enlightenment, and now you just can't get enough ketchup. I don't know. Over time, our tastes change. Our styles may change. Our waistlines certainly change. Our hairlines change. Sometimes our jawlines change. But, do we change? Can people really change? It's an important question because how we answer that question will ultimately determine how we choose to fight in this world. Because if we believe that people cannot change or that they will never change, we will then likely choose to otherize them or dehumanize them or demonize or villainize them until we've finally turned them into our enemy. And then and only then will we no longer see them as fully human and as children of God. And then we give ourselves excuse to justify violent words or actions that will ultimately seek to defeat them altogether. Now, violence comes in many different forms. We know this. It's not just physical. Violence can come in the form of verbal or emotional, psychological, spiritual, societal, systemic forms. And violence is not just blatant and obvious. It's often very subtle and elusive, even shifty. In my previous church in San Diego that I was serving, I had a couple come in. They wanted to talk about their communication, their marriage. And the husband said, whenever we get into an argument, she just never fights back. She always, just leaves the room. And I asked his partner, is this, typically how you control your anger? What do you do? And she says, I go and I clean the toilet. And I said, how does that help? And she said, I use his toothbrush. That's savage, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, you could call that a form of violence, right? What is violence? Look, simply put, and hear this, violence is the willful use of force or power, threatened or actual, against a person or a group of persons that results in physical, psychological, emotional, or spiritual harm. And Jesus never once fought with violence or taught that violence was an acceptable response to the violence that we are apt to face in our lives today. Jesus taught a whole different way of living, a non-violent way of life that required us and the people of his day to act with courage, and especially the people of his day to act with courage as they faced injustice and oppression, as they lived under Roman occupation. And it wasn't simply that Jesus believed this non-violent way of life was just a matter of taking the high road or loving one's neighbor or even an expression of loving God, ultimately. It was all these things, but even more than that, I think Jesus believed this way of nonviolence was the only way his people could assert their dignity under Roman rule. And in the process, the only way that they could ever possibly win over their oppressors. Imagine for a moment the streets of your city, your community, your very neighborhood, flooded with occupying soldiers and battalions and tanks. And every time you walked out the door, you felt this intimidation. You were bullied. You maybe were even beaten by your occupiers. And everywhere you look, you see the glaring reminders that you are not free. Foreign flags, weapons of war, all these wooden crosses on street corners bearing the crucified bodies of agitators and dissenters. And worse than knowing that you are not free is knowing that every day you will be treated as though you are not even a human being. And this was the principal tactic of the Roman Empire as they dealt with the Jews of Jesus' day. It was public humiliation. It was intentional shaming. And the Romans didn't actually want to destroy the Jews because the Jews were a valuable commodity. They actually paid taxes to fund the Roman war machine. The Romans didn't want to do away with the Jews. They needed to keep them around. They simply just needed to keep them from rising up or rebelling. They had to subdue the Jews and control them, and so humiliation was their tactic. And this is crucial in understanding this teaching that you just heard Reverend Jerry give us today from Matthew's Gospel, because it is one of the most misunderstood teachings of Jesus. We often take this teaching out of context, and we turn each line of his teaching into these three weird, unrelated proverbs or colloquialisms, if you will, that have no connection with their original context. And so Jesus says, if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, give them your coat as well. And if anyone wants to force you to go 1 mile, you go the 2nd mile. And this, of course, is where we get the turn the other cheek moralism, which so many of us have been raised to think and interpret as don't fight back. It sounds a lot like Jesus is saying, just take your lumps and walk away. It sounds like Jesus is advocating passivity. This teaching is also where we get the popular shirt off your back colloquialism, only we've turned Jesus' teaching into an act of generosity and kindness so that we might say, oh, that guy, he was the nicest guy in the world. He would give the shirt off your back. It's also where we get the famous go the extra mile moralism, which we've turned into a deed of charity or kindness that goes beyond the demands of duty, so that we might say, wow, she really went the 2nd mile or the extra mile for that person, way over and above what anyone else would do. But do you know that Jesus didn't mean any of those things when he originally gave this radical teaching? If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other one also. If anyone sues you and takes your shirt, give them your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd. Jesus believed that by following these teachings, his people could not only stay alive, but they could reclaim their dignity as humans and even win over their enemies in the process. Let me explain, because I know this enemy-loving, cheek-turning, coat-giving, 2nd mile-going talk probably sounds a lot like Jesus is saying, just take your lumps and accept your fate. Just walk away and be kind and play nice. But Jesus was actually giving his people a lesson on how to reclaim their dignity in the face of daily humiliation. And Jesus talks first about someone striking you on the right cheek. And this detail about the right cheek is crucial, because for someone to hit you on the right cheek, they would have to use think about this, their left hand, right? But in Jesus' day, the left hand was used exclusively for matters of, how would we put this, personal hygiene, okay? The left hand was used only in the loo, if you will, the water closet, I don't know, the comfort station, okay? In other words, it was culturally taboo to use the left hand for any other tasks, even for striking people. And so if someone were to strike you on the right cheek, and they could only use their right hand, their only move would be the backhanded slap. And suddenly we see that Jesus isn't talking about a punch to the face with a fist. Jesus here is talking about the humiliation of a backhanded slap. And that changes everything, doesn't it? Because a backhanded slap to the face is not meant to harm you. It's meant to demean you and shame you publicly. But what happens if in that moment you turn and you offer the other cheek, and if they cannot use their left hand, then their backhanding tactic of humiliation has suddenly been subverted. And they can no longer shame you with a slap to the face. By offering the other cheek, you're saying, I'm still standing. And you tried to shame me, but I'm a human being just like you. What about giving the shirt off your back, this business? Jesus was referring here to the collateral that was used for a loan back then. Most people, in securing a loan, would offer a goat or chickens maybe, or sometimes even a land as collateral. But the poorest of the poor in his day, according to Deuteronomy, could use their outer garment. The outer garment was just a long robe that you would visualize that biblical people would wear in all the movies that you've seen about it, right? At night, they would use this long robe to sleep in. During the day, it was their overcoat. And according to the law, the creditor could take that outer garment as collateral every day, but was required to return it every night until the loan was finally repaid. And if you were poor, you couldn't afford to pay your taxes to the Roman government. You needed a loan. It was this abusive, humiliating system, much like modern-day paycheck loans today. And the system was stacked against you. So Jesus said, if you can't pay your loan and your creditor sues you for your shirt and your outer garment, just stand there in the courtroom and just give it all to them. Strip down naked. Give it all. Your shirt and your outer garment. As if to say, look at me. And look at what this abusive system does to all of us. You have fleeced me out of everything, even my BVDs. And now here's the last thing that you can't take. And I'm still standing, I'm still human. Now, by the way, if you literally try this in a modern courtroom, you will likely compound your legal problems. But in Jesus' day, what he's saying is, in the face of injustice, never let anybody rob you of your humanity. And show them that you are a real human being. Appeal to their conscience, their heart. What about this business of going the second mile? Roman soldiers back then were permitted by military law to force civilians to carry their military packs for 1 mile, but no more than 1 mile. And so mile markers were staked along the roads throughout Jerusalem and around Jerusalem for this very purpose. A Roman soldier's pack weighed about 85 pounds. Imagine. And imagine how deeply humiliating it would be for a Jew to be forced to carry the war gear of his enemy. But imagine for a moment if that Jew being forced to carry that soldier's pack, if instead of giving that pack back to the soldier, he straightened up instead and just kept walking with it, as if to say, I'm not your tool, and I'm not powerless. I have agency, and I, too, am a human being. And imagine that soldier as he pleads with that Jew, please, give me my pack back. Now being forced to see that Jew as his equal. Now, this is some serious Jesus jiu-jitsu, isn't it? Jesus is teaching what today we would call nonviolent resistance. And when most of us hear the word nonviolence, we might assume it's synonymous with passivity or non-aggression, as if it's all about what we're not supposed to do, to not speak up or to not stand up for what's right, to not act when we are being acted upon, to not respond in the face of evil or injustice or wrongdoing. But Jesus didn't teach ever that our highest aim should be inaction in the name of maintaining peace. Jesus understood that that way of living would only allow violence to perpetuate itself. He understood that it would fail to expose the real harm that's being done, so that the one doing the harm would never see what he's really doing. Because it's only when the one doing the harm sees the wrongdoing and sees the harm that he's doing to the other, can he then feel compelled to change. Jesus believed that the way to save the world was not by inaction in the name of unity or peace, but by the courageous actions that resist this human impulse that we all have, every one of us, the impulse to meet violence with violence in the name of some higher purpose. If you've ever struggled with understanding the cross, maybe you can simply see the cross as that one symbol, the symbol in which the divinity, the godness is on the cross, receiving all the violence that the world can throw at God. Only God does not throw it back at the world. And this is Jesus showing us that the only way to defeat violence in the world is to love the enemy so fiercely that the enemy finally changes. And many have embraced this way of life. Gandhi, Simone Weil, Myreed McGuire, Cesar Chavez, Martin Luther King Jr., they each understood that nonviolence was this courageous action that aims to right the wrongs that they experienced in their own world, but to do so by resisting the impulse to meet violence with violence to achieve their goals. And this impulse runs deep in our human psyche. It's in our DNA. And would you know that it even has a name? The late theologian Walter Wink called this the myth of redemptive violence. And it's a narrative that runs through all of modern society. The myth of redemptive violence says that there are good guys in the world and bad guys in the world. And the only way to save the world from the bad guys is to annihilate them. Some of us are old enough here to remember the old Popeye cartoons. And you've seen this myth play out in almost every Popeye cartoon. Big Bad Brutus torments good guy Popeye over and over. Sometimes, weirdly, he abducts poor innocent Olive Oyl. Eventually, Popeye just can't take it anymore, so what does he do? He cracks open a can of spinach, and he gains enough strength to then beat the snot out of Brutus, and then maybe in the process win over the hand of Olive Oyl. The whole narrative is that good triumphs over evil only when good meets evil with violence. It's played out, by the way, in just about every blockbuster film. Kill Bill, Django Unchained, Dirty Harry, Planet of the Apes, Walking Tall, John Wick, all the Marvel movies, even Star Wars, you can find it. And the plot goes something like this. The universe is in grave danger, and a malevolent galactic force is on the move. Forces for good are in great distress. A terrible crisis begins to mount, and all of life is endangered. And then a courageous hero arises, and the malevolent forces are vanquished. And then a celebration ensues, and the world is saved. And we love that myth because we're convinced that this is how the world works. To defeat the threat of violence, we must use violence. And it justifies everything we do often. We see it played out in every fight. We see it in every conflict. We see it in every war. We see it right now in Gaza. Jesus teaches, however, that violence only perpetuates violence, and only love begets love. And what he teaches us today in this passage, I think, is that the courageous work begins with loving ourselves. By asserting our own dignity, we are claiming our self-love, our beauty, our belovedness. And that's why Martin Luther King said the first principle of nonviolent resistance is to understand that nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. It's not a method for cowards. It doesn't step back from resistance. In fact, it moves toward resistance. It faces evil courageously. It's aggressive spiritually and mentally and emotionally. It requires great courage. And that courage begins with the love of ourself, to claim and assert our dignity and our humanness. Have you ever seen somebody do that? A fight broke out in a neighborhood one afternoon. It was about 40 years ago. It was my neighborhood. I was a teenager. And it all kind of started months earlier when a couple had moved in next door to a man and his wife, and that man claimed very proudly to be a Bible-believing Christian who didn't believe or approve of their kind. That is, the kind of those neighbors that just moved in. That was the gay kind. And one day that new couple's dog got through the back fence, as that dog had done many times before, and that dog wandered into the front yard of that man. And that man finally made good on his threat that he would shoot that dog if that dog ever got in his lawn again. And it was a Saturday afternoon, and the gunshot echoed through the neighborhood. And all the neighbors finally arrived, and it was an awful scene. This lifeless dog, two weeping neighbors, this red-faced man with a gun. It was awful. Months later, that same man suffered a massive stroke, and he was unable to speak or to walk. And while he was in the hospital, those two neighbors, they mowed his lawn. They hauled out the trash to the curbside for his wife. They did some repairs around the house for her. Whatever you need, they said, well, just call. And when that man finally came home from the hospital, they brought over some chicken noodle soup, a fresh loaf of bread, and a little note that said, "Welcome home. Get well." Our takeaways for today: nonviolence assumes that even our adversary can be transformed by the love of God. Nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. And nonviolent resistance begins with the courage to love ourselves enough to claim our humanity and assert our dignity. Amen.
I am with
know what? Will you join me in giving thanks just one more time for the blessed return of our choir and the music this morning? Yeah. Friends, as an expression of our gratitude, I want to ask you to remain standing after we recite the benediction for a choral response from our choir, if you will. Join me now in the words of benediction on the screen. We say as one, "Go forth into the world in peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast to that which is good. Render to no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the afflicted. Honor everyone. Love and serve the Lord. And may the blessing of God be among you and remain with you always. Amen." Go with peace.